Hello, welcome back to Create Value Wins. I'm Hugo, and this is where we ask the management questions most people are too polite to ask. If you are new here, we bring thinkers willing to say what the usual management conversation wants. If you haven't been here before, keep sending your questions. We will read them and we'll use them. Today's guest is Johan Roos. His book takes on one of the most consequential questions in management right now. Happens to human capability when AI does more and more of the thinking for us. He wrote it using AI tools himself, which makes the appendix on how he wrote it particularly worth reading. Johan, welcome to Create Value Wins. I want to start there. You wrote a book warning us about what AI quietly does to human capability, and you wrote it using AI. At what point did that feel like a problem to you?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here today. It's delightful. I love your intro, the video. It's fantastic. Now, I wrote this book myself, but I also used AI tools. And I used AI tools in a way to amplify what I was thinking, to challenge me, to come up with new ideas and suggest stuff, to categorize, not really come up with new ideas, but to categorize a lot of my previous work. And I've done 12 academic books, and I've got those 20,000 citations on Google and all that. So it's a lot of articles. So I used it to structure this, to anchor my current thinking in the history of the stuff, as well as looking to scan and see if they're relevant material today. So this I put together and used it in a way as I practice the preach, walk the talk of the book, namely, be really, really careful when you use these amazing tools, because you can lose your soul, you can lose your language if you use it too much. So that was something I was very conscious to do. So I've written the book, but I've used AI tools.
Thank you, Johan. We have a new segment this week. Steven has been tracking something that landed right at the center of what we are discussing. Walt Disney, Coca-Cola, Nike, Target, their CEOs all left early this year, and none of them said it was because of the numbers were bad. They are stepping down to spend...
Yeah, there's breaking news. There's a ton of news about management, about finance. You have the Financial Times, you have the Wall Street Journal, on and on. Article about this, that, and the other, little pieces, snippets. But how does it fit together? You see an article, CEO of Kroger stepped down. Over there, the CEO of Adobe stepped down. Rarely do you have a picture that says, we have a lot of CEOs of the most famous companies in the world are stepping down. They obviously need and want to spend more time with their family, or at least I think they're being told that they should want to spend more time with their family, because the long-term performance of these firms is all below average. And we've identified and are identifying more and more in this whole sequence which are the firms that are having long-term performance that is below average, and which are the firms that are racing ahead, coping with AI, doing the things that create value for customers, the exciting firms, putting them in context and explaining why their situation is radically different from those of these firms where the CEOs are being invited to spend more time with their families. So in this podcast series, you'll be hearing from us about these deeper issues that are rarely talked about in all of this profusion of supposed news in finance and management. The real news is what you'll get in this sequence. And so we'll be asking experts like Johan, who really know about this stuff. In this book, you describe how erosion is subtle and happens really without people noticing that it's occurring. What can we do to detect that we're becoming victims of this cancer, that AI is undermining everything that's human, everything that's meaningful, everything that adds value to our lives? How do we detect that that's happening?
This is really interesting. As you know, Steve, I did interview about 60 top leaders through the Drucker Forum network and my own network. And then I also did for 2 years research on professional facilitators who are using a particular method called Lego Serious Play, which is like almost the other opposite end of what we're talking about here, namely very analog, very hands-on, very tough. I would say one of the toughest type of facilitations, typically discussing with leadership team and discussing strategy and strategic issues, so forth. So what I found in those interviews and the data collection, lots of empirical stuff here, is that they were sort of subtle. The subtle things you're asking about is, for instance, many people are stopping sort of overriding what they get out of the AI tools. They stop challenging it in essence. They stop deliberating over what you get because it's so wonderfully beautiful and looks fantastic and very compelling. And you kind of take it for granted. So a lot of people that I interviewed really said, there is a risk I'm becoming sort of a servant of these tools rather than the master of the tools. And we can talk more about that. But the whole idea of humans in the loop being gradually pushed out of the loop. And there are indicators of that, or early warning indicators, some I just mentioned.
Doug, I know that you have been sitting on something on that exact point.
Yeah, so curious. Johan is a co-founder of Lego Serious Play and leading AI integration at Halt. What advice might you give leaders about how to create and scale the conditions that allow practical wisdom to thrive and to create the context that minimizes erosion of capacities and capabilities and amplifies actual wisdom?
So let me just thank you, Doug. So in the book, I talk about basically our choice. And the choice is really to either use these tools to erode our brain, to ensure that our jelly bean is working less and less, atrophy of the brain. Some people call it brain rot. I think that's overdoing it a bit. But it's like that choice of doing thinking less and less. And the last questions you will ask these tools would be, the LLMs would be, what should I think? You know, I often say this to people and they start to be a little bit embarrassed and say, oh, yeah. So it's either that way, or the other path, which I call the amplification part, is to really use it in a way that I believe I try to use it, is to amplify who you are, what you're thinking, and what you're doing. The essence of the book are the 5 C's, you know, the curiosity, creativity, critical thinking, communication, and collaboration, even with agents as well now. On top of that, or at the heart of that, we have this emergent capability that I call practical wisdom. And it's not my concept. This is back to Aristotelian virtue ethics, phronesis. It's also Thomas de Aquino's prudentia, and others have translated this. But this is not just a Western thing. It's also in the Chinese si said the hi. There's the Japanese ba, the context for this. There's in Islamic scholarship hikmah. There's the Vedic idea of viveka. All of this is the same thing. It's something on top of this, what we today refer to as wisdom. I would call it practical wisdom because it's about action. So your question is, how on earth can we do this? How can we scale this and not lose it? That's the idea, because it is the wisdom that we have. Wisdom is something very private, very individual. You know, it's from what you know, what you've done, what you think and feel, and all the scars you get throughout the life. And people typically say they look like Dumbledore. That's wisdom in a sense. But the whole idea is, how can we do it? Well, we can't really scale that in individuals. You know, it's very private. But we can scale the conditions to create this. So this would be, for example, when you create space for dissent. You know, you ensure that people almost like keep a log on when they dissented against the suggestions that are coming out. Creating reflection time and say, don't make the decision within seconds. Take 10 minutes or 20 minutes to reflect over it. So there are some very simple ways we can do things. And I've talked to a lot of leaders, and I'm actually working with a bunch of leaders now to help them think through rather not losing this context, because that's what we're doing. It's holding on to the coffee breaks, to the corridor water boiler chats, all of these things that we risk losing when everybody's sitting in their office or at home typing and watching the screen like we're doing now. So there's a whole bunch of very simplistic human things we need to do to not lose our soul here, or these 5 C's, or the emergent property of practical wisdom.
But Hugo, one of the things, Johan, one of the things that struck me when I got into using AI is that this practical wisdom I was being saluted by these AI systems that I had practical wisdom, and that everything I said was brilliant, and that I had nailed the problem exactly, and my solution was even more staggering, that I was coming up with these brilliant insights. And I said, hey, wait a minute, this is not real. You are kidding me. You are feeding me stuff that you think I will like, and you're hoping that I will keep coming back to get more of this sort of augmentation of my own self-worth. And so I started trying to tell them, look, set aside everything you think you know about me, set aside everything I've written, give me the real truth. And in some cases, they would give me a lecture on it, about everything you said is completely true. There's no sequency in this system. Others I found are more receptive and willing to set aside the sales pitch, trying to persuade me that I'm the genius of the century. What is your experience? Are some systems better than others? How are they dealing with it? Because they seem to be programmed to do this. And is it getting worse or is it getting better?
So first of all, let's talk about what it is. It's large language models. It's not large thinking models, to make that right. So we're talking about basically the evolution of autocorrect on your old mobile phone. All right. So don't kid yourself in terms of the depth here. And the reasoning that is in the system is basically called, and what you experience and what we all experience is really called reinforced learning with human feedback. That's what it is. It is this feedback. So these systems are set up, and I'll do it in the way they typically is. It was set up not to say, I don't know. Like I would say, Steve, if you ask me a tricky question about something, I say, sorry, I don't know. But these large language models, because of this human reinforcement of the feedback loop, is don't set up to give you the I don't know answer. It's like a multiple choice idea. You always have to have something. That's the basic of hallucination. But what's happening is, of course, that this is, as you say, it's sort of a nice psychological and sociological phenomena that we like to get praise. And when it says, oh, Steve, you're amazing. What a genius. I think you're right. The point is that you will then ask another question. You will go on to it. So what happens is that the answers you will get will be dependent on the questions you ask. So for instance, I have this idea, I think we can do. Whenever you start, I think that, it will say, okay, what is this guy saying? And reinforce that. And then you can say, well, I actually changed my mind, I didn't think that. And it will say, Steve, you're a genius. This is what it is. So if you know that, you also know that it is not just about prompting, to quote this amazing guy, Ethan Mollick at Wharton, who was very early on this. It's not about prompting knowledge. It's really about content knowledge. It's depth of what you know, Steve, when you can assess whether this is total horseshit or whether there's something to it. And this is why it's so dangerous to, what should we call it, younger people who are less experienced with less sort of substantive knowledge about things, because you get pulled into this. Ultimately, you believe you know some stuff. And this is, to me, the worry about this that we should really be careful about. It has to do with apprenticeship. It has to do with young generation in companies. It has to do with who are the leaders in 10 years. This is a big conversation. But it is this idea that you think you know. And this is dangerous as well. But wonderful tool. Believe me, I'm all for it. But be careful.
I also get the opposite phenomenon that the AI system tells me what you've just been writing when I submit something for review. It's total nonsense. Every management book that we've come across says the exact opposite. For 100 years, we've known that what you are saying is wrong. And so to come along and tell us that value creation is more important than maximizing shareholder value is totally wrong. And so you should really go back and study the sources and read the books and find out what the real truth is. So you come across this opposite phenomenon that they think they know what's true, and they can prove it, and they can show me many management courses and business schools that are teaching exactly what I'm saying is wrong, and they are telling me, yeah, pay attention to the evidence. The evidence shows you are wrong and we are right. Do you get this often?
But Steve, it all has to do with what kind of questions do you ask? I think it's quite useful to ask these LLMs to challenge you. But you have to have very long, elaborate ways of ensuring that it works. But absolutely fine. But stop for a while and think, where does these amazing replies come from? It comes from the past. Everything that's written ever, and 75% on what's on the internet and so is in English. So it's primarily sort of English based. And it will actually be biased from everything it has ever been written about these things, Steve. So of course, there is some recent research I came across. I can't remember who it was, so please forgive me. But it's this idea that if you ask about some of these strategic variables, like commodities, should I differentiate or should I go towards commoditizing? Some of this Michael Porter stuff. Should I augment stuff with AI? Should I automate? Should I have a short-term focus? Should I have a long-term focus? Going back to also the Drucker dimension. Should I centralize? Should I decentralize? Should I do radical innovation, disruptive innovation, or should I do incremental innovation, competition, collaboration, exploration, exploitation, to go back to the market? All of this has a bias in it because of what has been written by scholars, what has been written in consultancy reports, whatever is available. So you will see a clear bias towards what people talk about. So there's no thinking behind it. These are large language models, not large thinking model. And the reasoning that we can see is based on the bias that are in the text that is gone through. So it's not surprising, because what you were just saying, I think, illustrate that there's been a lot of talk about value creation with different kinds of meanings throughout history. So I'm not surprised you get that kind of answer. You have to think about, where does it come from? Well, it comes from everything that's written. So what you obviously have to do is to work a little bit the way you angle it and say and challenge back and push it and argue back and forth and ask for the because in all the arguments and stuff. This I write about in the book. So this is not magical. Nobody's thinking here in the machine. It's not a thinking machine.
Exactly.
But they're fantastic. Believe me, I'm not negative at all. I'm super positive. I'm amazed. I have now 12 agents working for me every day. I'm overwhelmed in the morning now, so I'm trying to do this bionic collaboration that I'm talking about in one of the chapters. How these agents are reporting to me, we're doing projects. I'm almost overwhelmed. So I'm working really hard on how can I work with these agents in a way that is not just about efficiency, but actually make me reflect and challenge me and forces me to think through what I know as well. So we're all working on this.
Do you find any AI systems are better than others in this respect? Or
I do, but I don't want to sort of PR things here, but I think you should all try them out and see what works better for you. I think we should heed what Jason Huang said in February at this NVIDIA developer conference. I think his speeches are pretty good, because it's not just about selling his stuff, but it's about painting where it may go. And you remember when OpenClaw was launched, this whole idea of having an agent that can actually do things in your computer, on your desktop, and in your files, super dangerous. And that's, of course, why Mac Minis were sold out within a couple of weeks, and people were sitting with Mac Minis on the side because they wanted to isolate these things. Now some of the big names in LLMs, some of the big names have developed their own version of this. But he said, now every company, in every industry, in every part of the world need an open claw strategy. I'm quoting him from February. Now that means you need an AI agentic strategy. And this, I'm working quite a lot now with companies. I'm working with one big conglomerate with 100 companies and trying to think of how their leaders should work with this without losing their human magic. This is the challenge because it's so enticing. You will be pulled in and it will do amazing things for you. And you will start to lose your mind, lose your human magic, I say, not your mind, your human magic. And you will start to think less and less and less, unless you actively work to retain and hold on to your human magic. That's the message I have, and that's the message of the book.
Well, Johan, speaking of retaining human magic, how should leaders design talent pipelines and mentoring to avoid the wisdom gap that you warn about, where over-reliance on AI thins out junior development and overburdens senior managers?
This is super important. And I think one of the big challenges here and now, and it will just grow in importance. I've spent a career in leadership development. I've been professor at various institutions. I've been a leader and top leader team of 4 business schools in different countries. So I'm very much into this, and I love leadership development. I think it's super good. What I'm worried about is a little bit what I said before. And the way to do is to be very, very careful now with weeding out, so I've heard people talk about taking out the junior layers. This whole idea of apprenticeship, of going from a novice to a expert or master of something, has been, our societies are built on this. Can we speed it up with technology? Of course we can. Can we wipe out the lower, sort of earlier development as well? No, I don't think so. But I'm super worried what young people will do now, because all of us have obviously an age where we have done all of this terrible work, grunt work that we had to do. We got to do some stuff, get some bad feedback, corrected and did it again, and then got nastier feedback, and then we learn. I'm worried that will be perhaps not removed, but be declined. And young people are getting more and more into use of the AI tools to kind of deliver reports and do stuff. And then they get insecure because they know it's not them, right? So here, top leaders themselves will have to use these AI tools. This is what I tell everybody. You have to use these tools to both learn, get the skills up, and role model that you should use them, but in a smart way. And then you should work throughout the organization to ensure that all levels both use them in a smart way. These tools, rather than think they will take out jobs, you should think about these tools impacting and changing all tasks for, I think, all of us. Just look at Project Iceberg at MIT. You will just see there's a white collar surprise coming up, right? Because much of what's done in the white collar work will be changed. Not the jobs, but the tasks. Think tasks. Then you can also see how you have to kind of ensure that the questioning is there, depth of questioning, that you have the space for reflection, that you ensure feedback loops from more senior people, etc., etc. There's much to be done now, but I think it starts at the top, and I'm afraid a lot of people at the top, it doesn't concern any of the listeners, of course, but a lot of people at the top don't have a clue of what's coming. I'm super worried when I talk to people. They say, hey, I feel like an AI concierge now. I'm a servant today. I don't know what to do. So I said, well, this we have to do. And this, of course, have been picked up by a lot of these AI-stressed big consulting firms, because they know the traditional model is going to be wiped out. So they have to figure out, how do we help? First, how do we know ourselves? And then how do we help others to kind of go through this? So I think there's much to be done, and this is super important to do now.
Excellent. Thank you.
Bring it on.
Okay, and here we are. So every week on Creative Value Wins, we put our guest on the spot with the same question. Johan, today is going to be your turn. So, Johan, in your view, what is the world's dumbest management idea you have heard from?
I think you will not be surprised, but I am a professor of strategy and I've been that at various institutions. So of course, I now see, and you heard me indicate this, I see leaders, junior, more senior and middle, use these large language models to develop strategy. I even wrote a piece about it called when you develop your strategy with using these tools, what's left? Stop, the most important part is left, because what's left is what you can bring to the party. So the most dumbest idea is to think that AI can develop and write strategies. That's the most dumbest idea I think of, for some of the reasons I've just said as well. What do you think?
That is a really dumb idea, and I couldn't agree more. So thanks for articulating it.
Johan, in your book, you highlight the risk of a wisdom gap from the signing junior talent pipelines, given the current cost or pressures in the AI automation trends. What practices would you advise leaders to adopt right now to protect long-term judgment, development in hiring these new people?
It is both in hiring, which I would say anyone who says stop hiring junior people, I think putting their organization at grave risks. It's not just about knowledge, it's about this very notion of fresh blood, if I put it that way. It's to have new inspiration come in from people who come in with have seen the world differently, different generations. So that's one thing. Be extremely careful in stopping hiring new people. The other thing is, like, as I indicated before, on the people who are already there, shift your unit of analysis from jobs to tasks and start to think which tasks are being impacted in a positive way that can be amplified by these techniques or eroded, and sort of start to work on that. This is what I'm doing. I said that before, with typically leaders, reasonably senior leaders, and start to think through this. How do we do this? What can we do? What should be our policies, strategy for this? What's our view on this? How do we do this? So I think it's really just setting the stage for not losing your human magic. And then there's a bunch of practical things that I bring up in appendix 1 of the book, what you actually can do. There's a 5-minute thing every day. There's a Friday afternoon day. There's a monthly thing, etc., etc. And I think the very hands-on practical stuff.
Okay, Steve, education is where all of this either gets fixed or gets worse. You want to take on this?
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe we're undervaluing maybe we're undervaluing young people. That here we are talking about getting rid of all the young people because they don't know how to deal with this. We'll just have them taken over by. There was this famous meeting of Eric Schmidt and Gary Hamel and the moonshots for management in 2007. And Eric Schmidt was explaining how Google, which was then an upstart and no one knew where it was heading, was explaining that, in fact, they recruited people with no management experience. And if someone showed up who had management experience, that was a disqualification. They were set aside. We don't want people who think like that. We want people totally fresh. And the management professors, business school professors who were there, were horrified. It wasn't that they didn't agree. They were horrified that this was being done. And as a result, what Eric Schmidt was talking about it wasn't that it was mentioned in the report and said, well, this doesn't make sense. It was not even mentioned. It was because the professor said this was dangerous to have people setting up organizations which were relying on people who had no management experience, had never been to business school. This was, to what extent are we suffering from the same phenomena now that we are downplaying and totally underestimating the potential contributions of young people?
I think I'll say just a couple of things on this. First of all, I think just remember now that answers are cheap now. We can get an answer to anything. The capacity to ask questions that matters is really important. And you can say, what matters? So then I will quote a professional friend of mine who's been also kind enough to endorse the book, namely Mitch Retznick at MIT, the head of the MIT Media Lab. He's also a Lego professor, one of the two in the world. And he's written a book called Kindergarten for Life. And the point is, like, when we put our children in kindergarten, we want them to go out and explore, try things out, test things, and chew on things and bite on things and draw and build blocks or whatever. And then we put them in school and say, sit down, be quiet, and listen to me. So his message is that learning that we have as children should really go on throughout life. We have a tendency in school to destroy that, in a sense. But so the reason why we should be careful about what you say and why it's important is that people who come in with no preconditions see things differently. I'll quote the famous biologist Francesco Varela and Umberto Varela and Francesco Maturana and Varela, wonderful guys. They say everything seen is seen by some body, and that body has have lived experience, sensory inputs, and everything. So it means that we all see different things when presented with the same stuff. And that is so important. And if you believe, another quote is that the law of requisite variety, system theory, right? Ashby's law of requisite variety, that any system to survive must really match the internal complexity with external complexity. If it's too rigid, you won't be able to survive. All of this super good knowledge and analogies says bring in people with fresh eyes, bring in people with different perspectives. And if you stop doing that, you risk ending up with the same bunch of people at the top in a couple of years that have the same view about things, they see the same thing, they talk the same language, etc., etc. I worked in HALT for 10 years, 155 nationalities of students and faculty and staff throughout the world. It's extraordinary. Is it difficult? Yes. Is it amazing? Yes. That's what we need to think about. So be very careful with taking out variance from your perspective. So that's big message.
Yeah, so that makes this story also reminds us Clara, Steve's granddaughter, where with 2 years old, she has a lot of fun with the pen, and the pen, it can be hours of having so much interesting things to do. And in a few years, a pen will become an obsolete object that only serves to write something when it needs. So, Johan, before we let you go, we have covered the book, the tools, capability erosion, talent pipelines, education. Every conversation has a blind spot, though. What did we not ask that we should have?
One of the things that I'm also concerned with, that I haven't talked about, and which picks up on this, is, first of all, our conversation about this is typically on executive teams, right? What about the board? The discussion on board and governance is typically a little bit more silent, but I have worked with boards, I've been to boards, and I think that is an urgent conversation to have in the board. And the boards I've seen so far sometimes mostly focus on efficiency discussions. For the first 2 years, I think, after ChatGPT, it was all about how can we fire in people and become more efficient. Now, I think the conversation has to be this has to be an important part of the board agenda as well. Not just how can we be more efficient, but really how can we run the organization without losing our human magic? How can we hold on to it? So to me, that is a very important set of questions. The other one that immediately comes to my mind is really about the individual, us, all of us here, and those of you who are listening as well. How can we do this? Because we're so focused on us as professionals, but it's also us as human beings, in a sense, that we have to also, as I said from the beginning, hold on to our thinking capabilities and ensure that we every day use such tools to amplify our thinking, not to erode our thinking. So to me, I'm a little bit worried about people thinking less, if I may say so. And that means read books. I always read 3 or 4 books on the parallel. Read books, write things, test things out, experience, do all the stuff that the old history tells us we should do, namely create sort of a liberal education of ourselves. And it was liberal because it was about liberating ourselves from dogma. A little bit of hard sciences, a little bit of the humanities, and a little bit of the social sciences. That's, in a sense, the essence of what we need to do. Guys, I soon have to go to a final in the Swedish Hockey League, a match here. My family is waiting for me, and I think we're almost done, right?
Yes. So this is a huge subject, and which will need many discussions. Johan, you come here to make us to think. You succeed, possibly too well. To our audience, your questions are what make this show, and we send them, we read every one of them, and yes, we do judge the good ones. Next week, we are here with Andrew Sharman, someone else who won't let us off easy. So every previous episodes are in our YouTube channel. The link is in the description. And if you have missed any, that's a problem that's worth fixing. Our September conference is also coming up. Details will be sent later in the upcoming weeks. And so tell one person about what happened here today, just one. And if they don't thank you, that's on them. So thank you so much, everyone, Doug, Steve, and see you next week in our podcast channel. Till then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.